People use the phrase challenge a brand and have been doing for like 10, 15 years. And I think it's a little bit abused and overused, but I think once we focus on the problems that brands want to solve, then it's a great way of thinking. Understand who you are and be true to it, and don't try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes. But altruism only gets you so far.
Welcome to Mission Activated, where we bring you the stories of individuals who've awakened to their true purpose and are living a life of passion, impact, and alignment. I'm Aveline Clarke, your host, and I believe that when you're on mission, everything falls into place. Here, we share the journeys of those who've discovered their unique path and embraced their soul's calling. It's not just about making money in life and in business, it's about making a difference, living on purpose, and inspiring yourself and others along the way. Let's get to it. My next guest is Adrian Sandy, based in Sydney, Australia, originally from the UK. He has been building brands for over 25 years in corporate across food and beverage, snacks, personal care, and not-for-profit sectors. His is a story of the emerging mission and what one does as they transition from a successful career into finding ways that they can impact more people that's more soul-driven and using one's gifts. I loved this conversation because it was really raw and open, and Adrian talks very succinctly and transparently about the challenges and the thinking process behind it, how he has landed on where he is today, and understanding that it is an evolving journey. We all have evolving journeys. We never stay in a spot. And I think this conversation really highlights that. He's on a mission. He wants to cut through the BS, capture the gold for people wishing to build uncopyable brands. He is a lovely human, and I really enjoyed this. Adrian Sandy. Adrian, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning, Av. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, look, we've talked about this for a while. It's been a while, right, in the making. And that here we are today on a very special Friday, I understand as well.
It is. It's a special Friday. It's my dad's birthday. He passed away a couple of years ago. So I just got up this morning and said, well, I'm going to come on here. I'm going to share a bit of myself, and we're just going to riff and have some fun for 45 minutes. And I think that the authenticity that will flow out of that will be great fun and hopefully valuable to anyone who listens to this podcast. So thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Adrian's dad. I mean, it's nice that we can have these moments of reflection and special moments on the journey. And I'm really honored that you chose to share this moment with me. So thanks.
Pleasure.
Now, tell me, whereabouts are you for our listeners' sake? Where are you in the world?
I am in Sydney, Australia, which is just coming into spring after the savage grip of winter where, temperatures get down to 12 degrees or something. But we have a beautiful sunny day, and it's really nice to be here and in this part of the world.
Yeah, lovely. You're just down the road from me, technically. And it's nice to talk to someone, in my time zone. I have people from all over the world. But that's what makes this podcast so much fun, because I really enjoy getting people on here who have completely different journeys, different makeup of who they are. And that's what makes life magical and wonderful. And here, I'm all about just capturing the essence of people's journeys, but more specifically tapping into the magic of where you are and the mission, like being activated, like being on purpose. We don't become on purpose as a child, but certainly there's a moment in our adulthood when we make conscious decisions about what we're doing and why we're doing it and what brings us meaning. And I think that becomes more evident when we have big things happen to us. And so, I'm really keen to get stuck into this story and hear more about your journey, who you are, what makes you tick. And so, yeah, I'm going to kick off by asking you a question about something I heard, which is that you did improv comedy for many years.
I did, yes. It was brilliant because people always said, "Oh, you're very brave for doing that." I couldn't do that. I couldn't do stand up, and say, "Oh, well, it's not actually stand up." And I actually think that to script something and to stand on stage and deliver it to entertain and make people laugh, honestly, is actually quite challenging. And I've never done it. But to stand on stage with nothing in your mind, with a blank canvas, and all you need to do is listen and react to what someone gives you as a gift, that line of dialogue, they're creating a relationship with you, they're creating a scenario, and all you have to do is honor it and respond. And then out of that can come, a sketch, it can be a scene, it can be a play, it's improvised comedy, long form. People improvise whole plays out there. And so it's a beautiful act of spontaneous creation that forces you to listen and really value what's in the moment. So as a way to sharpen your brain and open up new areas and let you think, it's fantastic. And then hopefully, if you're doing your stuff, then people will be entertained and laugh as well. So yeah, it was fantastic.
That's
Fantastic.
Great. I was going to ask, what did you learn from it? But you kind of said that. And I'd have to say, from all the times that we've spent talking and conversing, you have a gift of listening and reflecting back. So it's certainly, that's noticeable, Adrian.
Thanks, Ab. I think I would summarize it in one of the kind of the mantras of improv is yes and. So it's always taking what you're given and then building on it, So if someone, gives you something, if someone gives you a pineapple, don't just put it to one side and ignore it, start to chop it and eat it, comment on it, why did this person give you a pineapple? What does this mean? It might mean nothing, but honor it and build upon it. And I think that's it's a great way to live life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me, how do you serve in the world apart from maybe giving people pineapples?
Oh, well, yeah, mainly just giving people pineapples, but when I'm not on tropical fruit-based endeavors, um, what what I love to do. So I have a work side, and then I have the side that is myself and what I'm trying to do for other people, and they blend and they interact. So from a work perspective, I work with businesses who really want to disrupt what they're doing. They either have brands that they want to move to a different space, or they have new brands that they want to bring and create new categories and drive growth. People use the phrase challenge a brand and have been doing for like 10, 15 years. And I think it's a little bit abused and overused, but I think once we focus on the problems that commercial brands want to solve and what the role is in people's lives, then it's a great way of thinking. And I try and help businesses, particularly in food, unlock some of that growth. And then kind of related to that, with a background in marketing, it's saying, well, how can people do that for themselves? Or how can they do that for their own small businesses that they're trying to create? And I like to have discussions around this concept of uncopyability. And we all have something inside us, which is uniquely us, and it's uncopyable. But often, because of the way that maybe we've built our careers, which is living by someone else's agenda, it often gets hidden. So I like to have the discussions to say, well, first of all, how can we help people discover it or rediscover it and unlock it? And then once they have that awareness and insight, how can they start to understand how it can be used in the world? How can they frame it in a way that adds real value for people? And then there's the confidence to actually release it into the world. So it's taking 30 years of corporate knowledge and frameworks and stakeholder management and all kinds of buzzwords, trying to condense it into something that has real meaning for individuals and the businesses that people want to build.
Wow, so important. And I'm sure everyone listening would really relate to the need for that and the importance. Must be a fascinating world. I'm thinking when you're talking about food industry, especially. and you're trying to create brands, a new brand. And where's the line between ethical brands, or an ethical motive for creating a new brand versus the non? You know what I mean? Is there a line that you've got to teeter along as you're working there?
Oh, it's yeah, that's a great question. My philosophy is just don't hide anything. Yeah. So you can be a brand that is full of sugar and fat, but my God, you taste fantastic. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Ultimately, some brands, maybe their packaging isn't as recyclable as it could be, but providing there's for a reason, but just don't try and hide it. Yeah. And the consumers will make their mind up. Yeah. And your bottom line will therefore make your mind up, but don't try and hide anything. So providing you're not doing anything disingenuous or misleading, which is, don't treat consumers like idiots, because they're not, they're super powerful, particularly nowadays. Then just understand who you are and be true to it, and don't try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes. And then if that's not working for you, then maybe you need to go down a more ethical route and be more recyclable or make your products healthier. But there is still a role for a whole range of food products out there, from healthy to downright unhealthy, from packaged to unpackaged. Work out where you want to play on that spectrum. Do it for the right reasons. Understand the people that you're serving and your consumers, and just do it with passion. Yeah. There is an awful lot of inauthentic ethical marketing because it feels like we should have more recyclable packaging. Or I did some work with the not-for-profits a few years ago when I was working on a startup, and we had a look at like profit for purpose businesses, and there are some businesses out there which are genuinely profit for purpose. So I don't know whether some of your listeners have heard of Who Gives a Crap, which is a toilet paper company who gives 50% of their profits to sanitation projects around the world. I think those kind of businesses are few and far between, but they put their money where their mouth is. 50% is a decent chunk of cash to be investing back into purpose-driven projects. And that's a brilliant example of a profit for purpose enterprise. A lot of people just do, we'll give 1% to a certain charity, or we'll give 5%. Or, look, it's all about mental health nowadays. Maybe we need to find out a partner or an influence in mental health. So let's get those guys on board and give 1% to them. That's more unethical to me, because it doesn't go to the core of who you are and what you believe in. It is just linking into the profit motive.
Exactly.
A good friend of mine, I won't go into his name, he's got this beautiful concept of like a multiple bottom line. So your business should be about profit, and it should be about purpose, and it should be about people. And I forget the fourth P, but it's how you look at your business through a different framework, and not just a monetary one, which as we start to develop our own paths, we can actually start to choose that that's the way we want to progress forward and build our businesses. Some corporates do it, not so many.
I mean, that topic alone we could talk about forever. But I'm just inspired hearing you, and I'm thinking, as a consumer, when I go to the shops and I look at packaging and ingredient labels and that kind of thing, I'd like to know, made by Adrian. Like if it hadn't made by Adrian on the side, then I know this is a quality product. I'm just joking there. But if only, all our food, yeah, right, then I could trust it. And so there you go. There's another idea for you.
It will be a very indulgent dessert, I think.
Yet authentically honest and pure. So there we go. I'd love to get into more of the journey that you've been on, because of the way what you've done, what you're sharing with me already. I'm thinking, man, there's got to be some real crackers and gems in that journey. And you're obviously on a path. You're very purposeful. You're aware of, the ethical lines in business, what that line is. So take us back on a journey. Sit under the tree, in the 100-acre wood, open the book up, once upon a time. Where did that journey start that's brought you to where you are today?
Oh, wow. Great. Whenever you're asked this question at interview, you think, well, where do I start? So I'm probably going to start back in, I'm obviously English from my accent. Um, um, I'll say where I am now, and then I'll relate that back to where I come from. So I believe that, as people go on this journey to unlock what they're about, and I still don't know. I'm still working it out. Yeah. And unlock this talent that they want to bring to bear and add value for the rest of their lives. It's all about acquiring different kinds of skills along the way. And at some point you reach this point and say, now this is the point that I want to start to unlock it intentionally. When I was kind of growing up, I was a little bit, well, people who know me say a little bit geeky, a little bit nerdy. I did maths at uni, and everyone who did maths at uni at that time would go down to the city in London, or they'd be actuaries or insurance, and way more money than I am at the moment. But I said, it's great. I did it because I loved it, because I was good at it, and I got a mental kick. And I thought, you're never going to get another opportunity to do something that you love for 3 years. Yeah, at the end of it, hell, I didn't want to work in it, So that's when I made the choice and moved across to marketing, and started off in food marketing. So initially working in sales for brewers, and then built my career, kind of a very classical marketing career. So working on big household food brands, working your way up within the marketing ecosystem. So worked on Smarties, Kit Kat, Tetley Tea. I've worked on, grain waves for those people over here, a whole range of household food brands. In 2002, I was offered to go and head up marketing for developing markets. So, I've kind of done this is some of the marketing skill set, your basic tools. Go and launch tea in Russia, go and launch tea in Bangladesh, go and launch tea in Pakistan. So I did that for about just over a year. Mind-blowing insights into how you have to start with culture and people and problems and the role that your product has in there. Nobody gives a monkeys about marketing frameworks. You got to understand the problem and the role that you have in consumers' lives in a completely different culture. So that was a brilliant year of expanding my mindset as a marketer to get the insights right, which is the bedrock of it all. And at the end of that year, kind of my mind full, my visa had come through to come to Australia, which hands up was sunshine and lifestyle. Yeah, I'd worked in London for a few years, traveled Europe with work, and it just felt it was nothing to lose for coming here. So I came here for 2 years, which turned into 5, which turns into 2 kids, which turned into 20 years. Yeah. And then, so I worked for several, once again, big corporate businesses over here, Sara Lee, PepsiCo, Frucourt, Suntory. And I guess there was a point in probably like 2015, 16. And it was I had a hard conversation with where I was working, and I went into my boss's office, and I'd kind of lost my edge. Yeah. And he'd spotted it. I probably hadn't spotted it. He was saying, look, you can without a shadow of a doubt get to where you want to go, which is kind of the upper echelons of marketing and GM and that. But do you really want to? And do you have what it takes to get there? And that, it was pretty sobering at the time, and, you go through the various stages of, I can't say that on air, but, this is wrong, I can progress, but once you go through the initial stages, you realize that, look, you've been on the same path and trajectory for a while, and maybe it's time to get some different skills. The corporate world, to have value to it, you're acquiring skills to get put into roles within the corporate framework. But as an individual, I felt there were certain things that I didn't have that I wanted out to go and get. So I made a conscious decision not to go back into food marketing. And then I also worked in retail for a while. And then I was offered an opportunity to go and set up a startup in conjunction with a not-for-profit, Diabetes New South Wales. We were launching a range of products for people living with diabetes, which is a fantastic. We did it for 2 years, learned so much. We're on a great trajectory. COVID was a horrible time for startups. So it didn't work out, even though we'd started to build it. But my goodness, it just gave me that extra skill set of backing yourself, getting the tribe around you that have a similar philosophy, going for it, getting knocked down, getting back up again. And when you're adding it to what I'd had before, it just gave me a different experience. And then so I did a little bit of consulting once again with not-for-profits. And then just recently, I've been working with a business who's setting up a startup within a big corporate environment. So from that time where I made the decision that, look, I need to do something different and acquire different skills, I've kind of tangibly been adding different skills to sharpen perspective. And my belief is that perspective is the thing that we have which makes us truly unique. And the perspective comes from all of the different skills you've had, plus your upbringing, plus your passions, plus what drives you. And that's what we're all learning to try and understand in more detail, so that we can say, well, how can I take this perspective, this view that I have on the world, and use this for good and for purpose, and to be the best person at solving a problem for someone. Yeah, and that's the journey probably that I've been on for the last 10, whatever it is, 9 years since I had that conversation I talked about, and that I'm still on. So I'm now trying to, actively saying I've reached my pivot point. So the skills that I'm acquiring are through the lens of sharpening my perspective, so that I can hone the value that I really have to other people, which is, it's in this space of helping people to deconstruct some of the baggage that they've picked up as they've gone through their careers and through their lives, and just chisel away at it until they can get back to, the purest version of themselves, with this really sharp perspective that comes from experience in life, and then understand how to reframe that and have value in the world. And there's a great quote, which I'll try not to butcher, from Michelangelo. And it's when he was kind of faced with just a block of marble and he had to carve from it. He said, we're all trying to, someone asked him, how do you carve? And he said, I try and find the angel in the marble and then carve until I set her free. So it's trying to get rid of all of the excesses which have had some value in our pack and in our past, and get back to the purest version of ourselves, and then understand how we can reframe that to drive us forward with purpose for the rest of our lives. Hopefully that answered the question.
Well, I've just, noted down about 12 other questions. Thank you for that really, really interesting background. One of the things that stood out for me was obviously this description on perspective, and even this quote that you've just shared of Michelangelo's. Do you feel that this is what you're here to do, to help people to get rid of all the unwanted clay and help them to see what that angel looks like?
I don't believe I'm here to do it for them. I had a call with someone, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and it was very good. So we were trying to delve into what's the problem what's the problem Am I trying to solve a problem for her and see the problem? And she says, no, you're trying to help me. You're trying to empower me to see the problem and solve it for myself. Yeah. So it's more through asking the right questions and getting people to see things through a different lens that enables them to get more clarity to then use that clarity to define the problem that they're trying to solve, which is distinct from trying to solve the problem. So I'm probably using that analogy, just I've got a toolkit full of different chisels and we're trying to find the right one for them. And so try this one, no, try this one. So via the use of questioning. And then once they get that, then they can start to carve their angel. Michael, we've got quite ethereal, haven't we?
We have. That's fine. We go in many different places on this podcast. If you're loving this conversation and want to dive deeper into purposeful work, then it's time to thank the 6-Star Leaders community for making this episode possible. The 6-Star Leaders are a group of purpose-driven business owners committed to doing business differently by embracing their unique genius and skills to make a real impact. It's a space for learning, growth, and truly becoming empowered in everything that you do. If you're ready to discover your own 6th star, go to bit.ly/6starcommunity-intro and book a chat to learn more. We look forward to seeing you. At what point, if you can remember, do you think the whole notion of purpose and having that purpose in your work was important to you, or you tapped into it?
I think definitely working in a startup with a not-for-profit definitely opened my eyes to they do some fantastic work, and in this case it was in the space of diabetes, which is a real challenge for people and often goes under the radar because it's not as, if you excuse the phrase, it's not as glamorous as cancer when you're trying to draw attention to stuff, but it's a real, it's such a powerful cause that needs a solution, and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of worthiness and purpose within it, but altruism only gets you so far. You need to understand how to unlock it, and you need some kind of business savvy or frameworks or something from the commercial world that can help you do that. And some things we got right and some things we didn't get right. So that really opened my eyes to how those two objectives need to operate. Is that if you have a viable business and people are willing to pay for it and you have profit, then you can do things that are altruistic and you can start to deliver your purpose. So that's kind of two of the P's. So that was probably one moment. Passing of parents, I mentioned my dad, and I think that gets us to reframe our lives, in that often we have these people who are parts of our lives, and even if you don't see them much, they're always there. There's always someone looking over you, in the background, and then all of a sudden you are, it's almost like you have to. It's not that you're on your own, but you have to both go out there and truly clumsy wording, but truly find what you're meant to do. But also, it's part of it is then, part of it's kind of honoring people's memories as well. You're not just doing it for yourself. The third thing is that I have this concept is that there's something called an enough line, and it's really hard to think about purpose until we know that we are comfortable. We have the house, the lifestyle that we want, that, we are able to look after our children. People are a lot lower than that. They need to eat, they're thinking about the day to day. And a lot of the time, we're all driven by thinking that enough line is higher than it is. So once you know you have enough to live the lifestyle that you want, then you can start to forego the need to get more self-esteem through better jobs and more promotions. You can say, I can still choose to do that. Or once I've reached my enough line, I can choose to spend my time and my energy pursuing my passions and getting more fulfillment in my own life and hopefully giving it to others. But you kind of need to be at that level and to have the awareness that you're at that stage, because otherwise it is very difficult to think about activating your mission and finding your purpose if you also need to pay a mortgage. So that the awareness of that, and the conscious choice to say, no, I have enough. It's time to go and seek some joy and fulfillment because I'm above the line.
So how does someone who's below the line find that joy and fulfillment?
Well, that's a great question. I think you can be on a journey. I think you can be on a journey knowing that you have to earn a certain amount of money to get to it, but you can still have a vision for where you want to go. And you can start that. You can always do something every day. So I'm a great believer in this concept of, life is built up of small moments of joy that exist in the day to day, but often our awareness isn't there, so we don't spot them. A friend of mine put me on to a really simple thing, which is just kind of writing one thing down that you're grateful for or joyful for and just putting it in a jar. It's a little bit cliche, but at the end of the work, when you look through that, you find some fabulous stuff in there. So there's so many small moments that you can find joy and purpose in every day, even if you have to go out and earn money. The other thing, which I guess comes from the business world, is that I've done so many brand plans, 3-year plans, 5-year plans, long-year term plans. There's only two things you need to do. You kind of need to know where you're going, whatever that is, 5-year plan, your vision for how you want to change the world, the category that you want to build, and you need to know what the first step is. Yeah? And that's all you need to do. 2-3-year plans in the interim. Everything changes. You're not in control of it. You're in control of knowing where you want to go, and you're in control of taking the first purposeful step towards it. Focus on that.
Such great wisdom there. And something I want to link back to something you said earlier around this interaction with others, especially with the improv, and this relationship with others, experiencing the daily moments and flowing with that. It sounds to me like what you're saying is, if you know overall where the vision is, and you just know it, and you start, then go on the journey. You don't know where the journey is going to go, but it's about experiencing it and living in that day-to-day and moment-to-moment life.
Yeah, and finding people. By living it, it's about then finding the people in your tribe who will help you get there. So if you're living it and you're being explicit about it and sharing something of yourself, so vulnerability is a key part of this, then you will attract people who think in the same way, and their perspective will give you a feedback loop to sharpen yours. So it's not about, to use a social media analogy, it's not about building followers and likes. It's being able to unlock those 1 or 2 people who will come back with a comment, and you'll have a discussion, and all of a sudden your perspective will change. Yeah. And it's about having 10, 15, 20 of those people who are your tribe, who will help to shape where you're going. And that's why it's important to take the first step and constantly share your journey.
No, absolutely. And that's what you're doing here today.
And that's what I'm
with
doing
me.
here, yeah.
Tell me, what brings you the most amount of joy?
Oh, the cliche would be inspiring people, getting them to see something that they didn't. And often making them smile or laugh as well. But the second's one related to the first. There was a great quote. I think it was about, there's a British comedian died a few years ago called Sean Locke, and he was saying, like, comedy is like opening a small door in your brain that you didn't know existed. Yeah. And that's a beautiful analogy, that because when you open it, comedians use device like metaphor, the everyday truths, then all of a sudden it's so obvious, so true, but it just opens this little bubble of joy. Yeah. So you can either do that from the perspective of making people smile or laugh or bringing joy, which is where improv comes, but also through I guess the work that I'm trying to do on my purpose, which is asking questions that give people inspiration and insight that was there all along, but they just didn't see it because the door was closed. That gives me joy.
I love that so much. So tell me, what about the days when maybe you don't have those connections? Maybe you have a day where, I don't know, the clouds are grey, you're moody, you've woken up and it's just not a good day. And it could be not a good week because we're human after all, and we all go through stuff. How do you stay connected to the path when you have those days? How do you deal with that?
I think we all have to have our energy sources, and sometimes it's to inspire us and sometimes it's just to recharge us. It could be like walking, or it could be music, or it could be, I kind of like getting away from social media and going to reading as well. So probably reading some businessy type books. I read a lot around, personal brand and copyability and that, and just finding these little examples that kind of just start to inspire you and give you that little bit of energy to kind of get through it. And often that's at the beginning of the day when you need to start the day. Yeah. If it's towards the end of the day, it's just taking a step back and saying, look, everyone has a bad day. Just because you're having a bad day, that's all it is. Let's just name it. It's a bad day. It doesn't need to be a bad tomorrow. It doesn't need to be a bad week. It's just a bad day. And accept it. Don't try and change it. Christ, we all have them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's way easier to give people advice to take it yourself. So a lot of the time when I'm working with people and on a call with them, I actually think, oh my goodness, this is the advice that I need as I'm talking to people. Yeah.
And now the great thing is, Adrian, you'll be able to replay this episode, this conversation.
I know.
And you will just hit rewind, play, pause, stop, rewind another minute, play. You can just listen to your own voice. Hopefully you don't mind listening to your own voice.
No, hopefully not. There's this great, if I might, there's this, I believe when you're trying to, it's like when you're trying to talk to someone and trying to unlock what their uncopyability is, you're trying to find the things that they do without trying. Yeah. And because people, cliche, people say superpower. Yeah. And people aren't aware of it, but even if when you say it, it's often not true because it's the stuff that you need to hear and you need to tell, you get a perception of what someone else's superpower is. It's the stuff that they do without trying and they don't even know that they're doing it. That's what you dive into and then say, right, having got an idea what it is, you now need to write that down in a framework. Write down what you do. And it's clunky and it's often boring, but once you write that down, then you'll get a much greater awareness of what you do without trying. Yeah, I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago and he said, look, my superpowers in this space of I try and get people to feel their problems. She's a marketer and she's tapping into, how the heart and the mind and the rest of the body is conjoined in marketing, and what we feel is what we buy. It's cliched stuff. But for her, it's about how to get people to feel their problems, and that's the gold for her. So then we, have a discussion. We'll say, well, how do you do that? And then let's write that down as a framework, because once you know what you do without trying, then try, and it will be amplified beyond measure.
You're like a mirror, aren't you? In a way.
Yeah. And maybe just changing the angle.
Yeah.
Just changing the angle of the mirror. And walking around the room so they see different backgrounds on it. And then they'll say, stop, right there.
Yeah.
And I say, okay. Yeah.
And where it shines the brightest, where they get blinded, it's like, oh, that's the bit. That's the one. And then, yeah. What a gift. Yeah. So that's your gift.
We try. The more I go into the space, the more conversations that I have, the more you see the value that you give to people. There's another thing, jumping around, is that you kind of like to start out with you know, the Japanese concept, I think it's ikigai, yeah. So it's got the 4 boxes. So it's kind of what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what's the purpose that you have in life. And then the fourth one is money, which I don't really believe in, and it's the intersection spot, because I believe that if you do the first 3, then the last one flows. Yeah. So if you get what the value you want to have in the world, what you're good at, what you're passionate about. So then you start out with some regular questions in that space, because you have to build rapport. You have to be, two-way vulnerability before you can go deeper. So you should know, what are you good at, or be a cliche example, or give me a time in the last 2-3 weeks that you are most enlivened. Yeah. And then as you go deeper, you start to I collect this list of questions that you can be more tangential to get to a deeper question. So one I heard the other week was, well, what's your foodie name? Yeah. So the idea, and not just food, it's foodie. And that's why I asked this to someone, and all of a sudden we had this beautiful richness flowed out. So this guy was an oyster. So all of a sudden you start to hear that he's slightly hard to open initially, but once you get open, he's very complex. There's the taste of the sea in there. There's lots of different tastes in there. It's slightly surprising. He's polarizing. He's not for everyone. Some people love him. Some people hate him. There's this element of surprise to what he's going to give you. And if you work with him long enough, there's a pearl at the center. Yeah. And we had a description about, what size of lobster, and you put Tabasco with it, or lemon, or, Kilpatrick. But that's why, going into the depth of who he was, using a different way in, metaphor is also really powerful. Then kind of at that next level of questioning, under those 3 spaces, good at, passionate about, and where do you see yourself solving problems, can be really, really potent.
I mean, what you're talking about here is the gold. It's the juice, right? It's to me, it is. I listen to this, and it's just like music to my ears, and because I feel like people like you and the work that you do, if everyone, especially let me think business world, and we'll say entrepreneurs, small business owners, maybe people who've been in business or want to get into business, if they went through this discovery, perspective gaining process with you, imagine the impact that would make. I mean, that's what this podcast, this is one of the themes, or the tenets of this podcast, which is, inspiring people, because I want people to feel enlivened on their mission. And you don't get there unless you've gone through a process of discovery of the self. And that's where you come in. Maybe I'll just send everybody and say, right, okay, everyone's got to go see Adrian Sandy to go through his process, and the world would be great. Imagine that.
Well, yeah, we'd be a lot more aware of what we did and didn't want to do with the rest of our lives, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it helps. It feels like if you were to say, what's my mission, which I guess is the theme of the podcast is, and I discover it for myself as I try and do it for others. It's this frustration at the massive pool of wasted talent and skill and experience that could be having good in the world, because people don't know how to unlock it, they don't know how to reframe it, and they need the confidence to release it. And it often comes with people who have worked in, a corporate role for 10, 20, 30 years. They've got all of these skills, but they've been living to somebody else's agenda. They've been, mimicking the perspective of whoever they've been working for. And it's how to give them the confidence that's absolutely perfect. At some point, people will have a sense that maybe that's not right for them going forward. And it's how do you cash in the chips for everything that you've invested in, or continue to consciously build skills behind what you're doing and extract that to build perspective. And it's how you can release that. And sometimes it's people releasing it on their own. And sometimes it's, connecting people who have complementary skills so that they can then connect them and really do some good for themselves and, hopefully the world. But I've kind of went through it, still going through it to some extent. But there's so much talent and potential out there, and especially because a lot of people have worked in corporate. They're already hit their enough line, whether
Mm.
they know it or not.
Yeah.
They're comfortable. They can live the
Mm.
life they want to lead. So how do you want to spend the rest of it? Do you want to chase dollars and a bigger house and a bigger car, or do you want to invest it in experiences and people and discovering more about yourself? Neither is wrong.
That's right. They will just feel very different.
Mm.
So that brings me to another question around this. Would you say that it was easier on the journey, sort of fresh out of uni, first job, that those first 5 years or whatever it is, compared to being on path now?
It's less. No, it wasn't easier. It wasn't easy. I didn't like the first role that I did, but I felt I was getting a lot of value from it. I was kind of going around selling beers to RSLs or working men's clubs, which was kind of, that knocks the edges off a uni graduate like nothing. I think it's more that I accept that it's part of the journey. Yeah. So if you know what you're moving towards, and you can it's cliche, but if you can reframe the failure and say, well, what's the learning you're getting out of it, then you can use it to in a positive way. Whereas if you're 20 something in a role that you're not enjoying, then you don't have that self-awareness to frame it in that way.
That's true. So was there any time on your journey in the past that you needed to overcome in some way to ensure that you stayed true to yourself or the mission, or the vision that you had?
Yeah, every time you're offered a new role, particularly when you're building a career, you're saying, is this, should I just do one more? Should I just do one more contract? Should I just, I'll take this promotion because it's not perfect, but the money's quite good. Yeah. And you kid yourself that that's fine. And you know what? It is fine. And it often takes an event that says, okay, I can now see that that's the trajectory that's going to happen going forward. And at some point, the time at which you want to take this experience and money and reframe it to do something for yourself, the runway might run out. And I guess once you hit a certain life stage as well, and you have mortality of parents or friends, then that's often a trigger to start to focus on whether just one more spin of a promotion or a corporate loop is going to be the thing that serves you.
Is that coming from comfort, greed, security, all three? Ego, maybe?
It's probably about taking time to understand what are the things that are going to drive you. So if you work in an environment that its measure of success is about comfort, greed, and ego, I will translate that across to your job title, how much money you earn, whether you've got a car parking spot. Yeah. So if that's the framework in which you've been to which you've been exposed, then you don't necessarily think about other things. You don't maybe think about the time that you have with your family, or how you want to have different life experiences that may not pay as much or may not look as good on LinkedIn. Yeah. And it takes some time, and it's often an event which triggers you moving away from that way of thinking about it. For me, it was when I had that discussion with my boss, over 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Often there is a life-changing moment. There's an event that happens that causes us to look at things, evaluate things, and look at things from a completely different perspective or different angle in. And obviously that's what that conversation did for you.
Why does it have to be like that? I think that there is some psychology that sits behind it, which says, 90% of the time we are more motivated by moving away from something toxic than towards something that shines. But how can we move that? So, if I can help people who have be aware that they've reached an enough line, yeah, and everything is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with where they are at the moment. But if you can just start to find a different way of navigating so that you're moving towards something rather than away from something, that would be pretty good.
Yeah. There's two more key kind of questions I've got for you as we're kind of nearing to the end, and as much as I don't want it to end, but the first one is around breaks, as in, we're in this, on this path, this journey, especially in the corporate world. There's this constant, I'm seeing the hamster wheel, but there's this perception that you've got to keep going all the time, be on, always pumping out deliverables. How important is it, do you think, for someone who's on path to take time out of that, the work construct, and just to be and to recharge, whatever that is for them?
I think it's very important, because most of the time when we are, let's take the time that we have, that we're not asleep in the day. A lot of the time that we have is not even at work. It's the time where we're maybe doing some task, or we're going for a walk, or we're having a shower or something. And a lot of the physical hours that we have, the brain time, operates in that space. I read somewhere there's a fancy name for it, but if you can give yourself time for that, your brain is still working in the background. Yeah, so your brain is still working on things, and if you can give yourself enough space, then that's when a lot of the connections and the hunches start to join. But if you're working 12-hour days against an agenda that's probably not your agenda, then when do you have time to give your brain that space to start to connect dots serendipitously? Yeah, and the brain does need time to do that. So I think from a day-to-day basis, it's important, and then from a life perspective, I'm probably going to have a sequence of mini retirements till I'm about 75. Yeah. And when I have a little mini retirement for whatever, a month, 2 months, then that's your opportunity to recharge, to reevaluate you're at where you want to go again. And then you invest in another project, or you go back and do another contract, or you might go back and work. If you're getting some skill from it, no problems with that. But it's that philosophy of, I'm going to take my retirement now in small chunks, and keep enjoying and moving towards my purpose, rather than where maybe we thought 20 years ago, which is, I'm going to work big enough, build up a big enough pot of cash and then retire. Yeah, and I think that's certainly the way I look at it, and I think it's becoming more common, that sense.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I love that notion of the mini retirements, or at least taking a chunk of that retirement out, in a elongated way, little bits along the way, rather than this notion of just work, and then stop. I mean, yeah, we've seen what happens to some people when they do that. But
There's an interesting phrase that my neighbour actually I think he's looking for work, but he's not that hard. And he came up with this beautiful concept, which is, I'd never heard of it, FORO, F-O-R-O, which is fear of running out. So you kind of don't really want to work, but you've got enough money that you think might last you. So it's not FOMO, it's FORO. And so he's battling his FORO, fear of running out.
Has he found his purpose?
His purpose seems to be having a pretty good life, walking the dog, and having come from a pretty stressful corporate role in the past. I don't blame him. Everyone's individual.
That's right. So if that's what gives him meaning and joy, then great. That's really good. So in saying that, I think for the last couple of probably 2-3 years, when I've had these conversations with people about purpose or being 6-star and what that means, and often there's this, I think often, people kind of have this view that to be purposeful or to live their purpose and impact others, you've got to impact a huge amount of people and be seen by, people on a global stage. And like your neighbor, and I just want to bring this up and then ask a question. Your neighbor is content. He's obviously got meaning and joy at the moment, walking his dog and, smelling the flowers and probably talking to the neighbors. That's wonderful. Other people feel they've got to impact the whole world. And I really want to emphasize that it's so important that we be ourselves. And impact does not mean you've got to impact every single person. And we don't need to be seen on a global stage. And it's not about impacting or changing the whole world, but it's about changing the world around you. That's important to you. And that world could be just your neighborhood. It could be your family. It could be your best friend or your partner. It could be an industry. It could be a business. See, and I think this, so I'm also drawing on your analogy of perspective, because we all have different perspectives. So I really wanted to emphasize that and ask your thoughts on that level of, impact, and not feeling that you've got to be so big that everyone knows what you're doing. And I feel that sometimes ego or this competitive nature in business drives people to think that they've got to be $1 million business, multi-million dollar, they've got to be, global, but they actually don't. What are your thoughts about that?
I guess for me, it's reframe. It's a word I like to use a lot. It's about reframing impact. So you can make a 1% difference to 100,000 people, or you can make a 98% difference to 100 people, and then they will go on and take that impact into the world. What do you want to do? And it's this concept which is linked to finding, the uncopyable heart of who you are and reframing it. What you're trying to do when you're reframing it is trying to find the space that you alone can occupy. So you're trying to niche down. You're not trying to be big. You're trying to say, I can solve this problem for these people better than anyone else on earth. Yeah. And that comes from your perspective and your experiences and what you're driven about solving for those people. Yeah. And as you go on your journey, that starts to get tighter. Yeah. And once you start to bring that voice out and you start to know who your, I use the word, super consumers are, then you can start to say to them, well, what did you get out of it? What problem did I solve? And they will tell you something that you probably not even thought of. And then you can double down on that. But you've got to have a really clear view of the problem that you can solve better than anyone, and then just get brilliant at that. Yeah. And the power of the internet means you can reach an awful lot of people still. Yeah. And so the impact that you can have by doing that is way more than just trying to build a big following. Yeah. And in a lot of cases is scalable to the point at which you would be able to make a living from it as well, and bring in that fourth pillar of Ikigai.
Yeah. Do the first 3 circles of Ikigai and the fourth will come.
It all starts with problems, and there's a lot of I see this a lot in the corporate world as well. With marketing, there's a lot of people talk about brands. So what's my brand going to give you? People don't buy brands, people buy categories first. You go into a supermarket wanting to buy a category, and then once you go in there, I want to buy toothpaste, but then you want to buy whitening toothpaste, and then you want to buy whitening toothpaste in a small size because I live on my own. Then you look at Colgate. Yeah. And Colgate, who, being the big company they are, will have made their physical availability spot on. You'll have seen the ads, there'll be the right space on shelf, they'll be at the right price, but people come in there and they buy the category first. Now, a lot of the corporates, companies, own huge categories, yeah, and you're never going to compete with those if you're on a category that's that large, because they dominate and they have muscle and they have money. What you need to find is this category that's not being served, in which you can be the only. And there's a great body of work. There's Category Pirates is a newsletter that I follow that do a lot of great work in this category design theory. And this beautiful phrase, which is, you're not trying to force a comparison, you're trying to force a choice. So you don't want to be compared against somebody else, because then you're playing the better best game. Yeah. And you don't want to play the better best game. You want to play the only game. So you're the only person who can deliver this, which means you create the category and then you put your offer within it. And because you've created the category and you've created the language, which is an important part of the reframe about who you are, then people will associate that language with you, and you will, even if other people come into that space, you will own that share of mind.
That's awesome. And I am sure everyone listening to this would have just gone, hey, there was a bit of a gold nugget there. Hit rewind and play that again. See, you are awesome at what you do. You know your stuff. Adrian, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, there I have my LinkedIn, Adrian Sandy. I don't think there are many of us in the world, so find me there. And within the LinkedIn, there's also a link to my very simple website, which has an opportunity to book a call and let's chat about what I do, and if this is a journey that people would be interested in going on, we can riff for 45 minutes.
Love it. That's wonderful. In closing, is there a piece of advice or a gold nugget that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Look, everyone out there has we're all completely unique. We all have a unique perspective, and it's about we all acquire skills that add to that, but at some point in our life, it's about understanding that this is the point at which you're going to start to pivot and start to sharpen that perspective and go on the journey that's what you're meant to do for the rest of your life. Just try and be aware of where in your life you are. Yeah, and whether it's time to pivot now, and what we've been talking about makes you pivot now, whether you need to acquire a few more skills, those are probably the two options. But if it's time to pivot now, don't wait. It's a long journey. You never get there, so just enjoy the ride.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Adrian. I have so enjoyed this. Absolutely captivating.
Me too.
Yeah?
Me too. Thank you. Yeah.
It's all right.
Loved it.
Me too.
Sorry it took so long.
It's like a fine wine. Yeah?
Beautiful analogy.
Yeah. Well, you enjoy that sunny day, and thank you so much. I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Mission Activated. If today's conversation resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Remember, your mission matters. When you live on purpose, not only do you transform your own life, but you inspire others to do the same. Until next time, stay aligned, keep activated. I'll see you then.